What's up, guys? JD at JD's Custom Buggies. So, as promised, I'm going to try and deliver you guys some sort of wiring video. Now, just keep in mind, what I'm doing here probably looks nothing like, as far as the placement of where the components are or what's going on, looks nothing like the buggy you've got at home, you know, your stock buggy. And that's really not the point of the video. So, what my point is, or what the goal of the video is, to help you guys have a basic understanding of, again, what component, whether it be a key switch, rectifier coil, CDI, starter, the principle of, or the job of each component, and basically, as far as the plumbing is concerned, the wiring, what, you know, the wires from this component A goes to here, and this is why, and this is what it's doing. So, if we, you know, if this gives you a basic knowledge or understanding of what's going on, you're going to find that diagnosing, rewiring, it can be made completely simple, and just understanding things makes things less intimidating. So that's what the goal is going to be. Now, I haven't done a video like this as far as, because I'm going to have to basically go step by step, stop the camera, turn the camera on. I'm not a big editor or whatnot. So obviously, hopefully the end product that I present to you will look decent or be decent. So there's going to be a lot of stopping, pausing, you know, but if it looks seamless when it's done, that's the magic of Hollywood, right? So anyway, I'm going to step out of the way here. So this is that's our patient, and basically it's getting wired as a race buggy. So I've already done a little bit of work here. So this is our box. This is basically a Centex box that you buy at Home Depot. You can find it in the electrical section. It's I believe it's a 6x6x4 box. I find that for what I do with the race buggies, that this is just plenty of room. And what our goal is, and what we're going to do, is we're actually going to place a battery in here. And the solenoid's going to be in here. The lid is going to house the key switch. The rectifier is going to be mounted to the outside of the box. And our CDI will also be in here. Okay, I had to think about that because I'm so used to nowadays with the race buggies using the Banjing unit, which basically is 3 wires that you have to hook up, and the coil is built in. Coil and CDI is packaged together. So we will have our CDI in here. So this is going to be, I'm a little spoiled lately, so this is going to be running more wires than I'm, you know, usually running on these. So I made a bracket on the back. So this bracket is basically going to bolt to the floorboard and be in reach of the driver's seat. So when the lid is on it with the key switch, you just turn the key and fire it up. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and mount this box and try to eliminate some of the other stuff, you know, prepping, getting the components together, and just get right down to the nitty gritty. All right, so let's get our box mounted. So I did a little prelim, just a little setup, not to bore you. So the box is bolted in. I got the battery in there. It's a WPS Firepower Featherlight lithium battery. I like them because they're small and they're very, very light. They really don't weigh anything. So I mean, it's kind of nice. So I got some blocks in there. I probably got to move around the foam block a little bit. And that's just kind of keep the battery from sliding around. We're going to put more of those as we go. I bolted on the rectifier. So the rectifiers get warm, so as they're charging. So we want to mount that outside the box to catch air. That's why it has air fins and everything. So I usually put them right on top of the box, or somewhere where the, you know, facing where the air is coming in. What the rectifier does is basically your stator, which is in your motor. Okay, a stator is basically, if you see this pigtail coming out here, behind the fan cover, there's a flywheel and a stator. Okay, some people call it a magneto. And what that acts like is a generator. It generates AC power. Well, most automotive, motorcycle stuff runs on, you know, is DC. So usually things with electric start will have like a battery, a rectifier, and whatnot, because it takes that AC power coming from the motor and then it comes into the rectifier here and changes the AC into DC, and then runs back to the battery, powers the accessories and whatnot. But this is what charges your battery. So the AC power coming into here, you'll see 4 wires here. You have a red, a white, a green, and then the yellow there. So your green is usually ground, okay? If you see green wires on the buggy, it's usually ground wires. If you trace them back, 90% of the time, you're running the ground. The yellow and the white, all right, that's input from the stator. So on your stator harness, you have the yellow, green, and white, okay? So that's coming in as AC power. So you got a ground, you got your 2 charging wires, and it comes out, and then this red wire is the output, and that comes out as DC, okay? And then that charges your battery. That, if you have lights or accessories or something, that's what powers, the DC wire right there is what usually does that. Most cases, I might make a detour here and there, but that red wire will run to a fuse, which usually basically powers everything. So, and we're going to do something like that. We're going to put a fuse there. If the fuse blows, you're not going to have power to the starter solenoid, which case the motor won't start. Okay? So hopefully that explains a little bit about the rectifier. So next, I need to run these wires. I have them pre-cut. Grab myself some wires. So I'm going to run wire basically from inside this box where I have this little pigtail in there. I need to tie them wires in, and they're going to run out to the motor over there. All right. In addition to these 3 wires, which is the charging wires for, from the motor coming in. In addition, we're also going to have to run a trigger, an AC power wire that comes from the motor. So you have a trigger that tells the CDI when to fire, or send a signal to the coil. We have AC power because it's going to be AC wired with an AC CDI. We have our right there, got our Universal Parts Performance CDI, and then we have our RDR hot coil. Okay, so we need to run 2 leads out to this coil. We need to run a lead out here also for your AC power for your CDI, which is the red and black, and then your trigger wire, which is the blue and white. All right. Also going to have to run an additional ground, motor ground. You can ground it to chassis, which I'm probably going to do is just tie a ground into the chassis and then run a bolt through one of these holes or something to ground the motor, and the starter wire, which are starter wires here. And what we're going to do about that is, because our solenoid's going to be way over there, so what I'm going to do is cut the end off this and tie in another heavy gauge wire to get that all the way to our box over there. Okay, so let me tie in these 3 wires, and then we'll go from there, and I'll show you what we're doing. All right, so one step, and all I did was, just because it was long and tedious, because I fixed myself into a tight little area here. So I got all my leads connected. They're going back to the motor. They're just laying there. But I want to get all these connected, and it just was a little tedious because I got big hands and don't fit in the box. So I don't like to use, I've kind of weaned myself off of using butt end connectors, crimp-on connectors, and going to those solder joints, which are, I think they're pretty cool. You can see I got them down there, where you just slip the 2 pieces of wire in, and basically you just heat them with a torch, and boom, they kind of solder themselves together. And then I just I go over everything with shrink wrap, so with heat shrink. So here's what I got so far. We got our ground coming from the rectifier. Now I just put like a 1 ground stud, and that stud is basically attached through the bracket that I made, the steel bracket, which is bolted through the floorboard, which grounds my chassis. So I'm gonna basically ground my motor to this chassis here. I like to run as little wire as possible. So I like to run every ground separate. That's just me. It's a preference. And just keep in mind, I am by no means like this. I used to do car stereos when I was a kid, like every other kid. But I mean, I'm not a professional. I've just found things that work best for me, and hopefully, you know, if you can pick up on some of these and these work best for you, that's great. But I'm self-taught through this whole thing, so just keep that in mind. I'm sure there's gonna be one or two professional, like automotive or power sports guys who wire things all the time, or you know, do electrical work like this, and they're like, yeah, this, you know, this is just me and it works for me. So that being said, I take one stud and ground everything. So instead of tying the rectifier right to the ground of the stator and then having to split that off, you know, with another, whether it be a solder joint or whatever, and connect that and then ground it, you know, I ground the rectifier to the same spot I ground the stator. The key switch will get grounded there. We'll get in more of that later. But so that's my ground. Everything, boom. Everything goes right there in the box. It's all grounded right there. The battery's going to go there too, the ground on the battery. So, let's swing around over here. And so now I've got these wires here, and I'm going to put on a the harness plug on these wires here and plug it in there. I still have to run the AC wire. I still have to run my trigger wire. I still have to run my 2 wires for the coil. Now the coil, again, I can actually get away with running 1 wire for the coil, and I'll show you how to do that or why I'm going to do that. So one leg of this coil gets grounded. One leg of the coil comes from the CDI. Okay. You don't have to run that wire all the way to that ground over there. You can ground it to the motor if the motor's grounded. So you could actually just take a loop and run it right back to the bolt that the coil's mounted on, and eliminate having to run a strand of wire all the way up to the box. But we'll get into that when we get to the coil. So let me set up the camera and I will kind of show you how I get these this harness plug on, and kind of explain that to you. Alright, so got my lines measured out, how much length I need. Cut these off. Splice some. Alright. Hopefully you can see that. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to lower the camera a little bit so I can get my hands closer. Give me a second to figure out this tripod. There we go. Alright, so, whoops, dropping stuff. Alright, so I got my plug right there in the bag. Now, this is the end that I need to go into my stator. So hopefully this won't be a big blur. What I'm picking out are my I need 3 male pins. So if you ever have to replace a rotted plug on your harness, this is one way you can do it. I'm sure there's a tool for this. In fact, I bought one and I haven't really taught myself how to use it yet. A little crimper for this. So I use my trusty pliers and my most trusted, best tool in the shop, my readers, because somehow I went completely blind over the last year. Alright, so what I'm doing is I'm gonna drop these other wires down. There's 2 sets of prongs. Whoops. Get it focused. Come on. It is completely blurry. I can see it from here. Oh, maybe not. Maybe it's my glasses. Sorry about that. Alright, so I got my wires measured out to the length that I need. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use this this plug, which you can buy, they're on the website, and this is going to mate up to my my stator. So in that plug goes these pins. I'm going to see if you guys hold my hand still, better focus. Kind of hard to see. So I'm going to tilt the camera up, maybe that'll help. Alright, so there's two sets of prongs on here. The prongs on the end, they clamp onto the insulation of the wire that you're attaching to, and then these need to be crushed on the wire itself, the second set of prongs. So just to give you an idea, I'm going to aim the camera down a little bit. So I'm sure there's a tool for this, but all I have are my trusty pliers. And this wire is a little thicker than normal. Alright, so I'm getting my pliers here. What I do is I crush down one side at a time. Okay, and then same thing with the goes on the insulation, and it takes a little massaging and whatnot, because like I said, this wire is a little bit fatter, the insulation on it, than but I like, if I could cram it in there, I like using the fatter wire better. And I kind of get it to dig right into that insulation. Alright, so that's one. Now this tab, if you notice, again, I don't know how well this is coming up. I'm going to try and zoom in. I just don't want it to get blurry. So there's a tab here that sticks up, but when you plug it into the plastic plug, it basically locks in and keeps it from coming back out again. Okay, and then they make a tool that you can knock that down or take them back out if you need to change anything. Alright, so let me do the other two wires. Did our yellow, here's our white. Like I said before, I'm all self-taught, so as long as I get to the end result, I usually try not to look at there being a right or wrong way to do things, unless there's a right or wrong way to do things. Just kind of massage them and make sure that they all lock down on what they're supposed to lock down on. Alright, so here's our plug. What I'm going to do is, because my memory is so bad, I got to match up. So the green one is going to go here to mate up with the green one on the stator in this hole. See how it locks in? And then the white goes next to the green. See what I did? I screwed something up here. Hold on. There we go. I just was missing the hole. Okay, that's locked in. And then the yellow goes underneath the white. There's only one way these pins go in. Actually, if you look inside them. There we go. So you can see we are all locked in there. All right. Now I'm not going to put any loom or anything or tie these up yet. So back to camera. All right. So where I'm going for is basically right here. And that, make sure all plugs don't hit. There we go, we're locked in. So you can see that our stator wires, well, you could if I put the camera in the spot where you can see it. The shock is in the way, but we're connected. Alright, so now we're going to run, we're going to find 2 wires to run for our stator, and we're going to find 2 wires to run for our coil. We're going to put more pins on, get everything in a box, and then work on our starter wire. We're almost done actually. This is, like I said, this is very simple. So stator's connected, we just need to connect the trigger and the AC power. Alright, so I cut myself a piece of blue wire, and I was out of black and red, so I used blue and red. It looks similar. Alright, and the blue and red, or the blue with the red with the blue tracer, is going to be for my AC power coming from the stator going to the CDI. That's what powers my CDI when you turn the motor over. The trigger wire, it basically tells you, it sends a signal to the CDI. To the magnetor's got a magnet, and there's a pickup and a stator that, as it rotates, it basically sets timing and gives the signal to the CDI when to create spark, and then the CDI sends a signal to the coil. All right, I cut these a little off, so let me my cutters and strippers. I like these to be the same length. I'm kind of anal about that, so. All right, put some shrink on these. I like to group my wires together and use some shrink. It just kind of groups the wires together and keeps everything organized. Now these are the bullet connectors that are going to go on the ends of these wires. I have 2 different colors, so I used them. It doesn't matter, this is preference, and that's the wrong connector. Give me 1 second. Alright, so I need 2 males. So I have a silver and I have a gold. So I use one of them. It doesn't matter which is which, but so as you're pulling them out, it kind of catches your eye, so you don't plug into the wrong thing. You don't plug the trigger into the AC and the AC into the trigger. These are the little rubber protectors. So we're going to slide those on first. We're going to get our pliers. Put one of these in this. If you heard that, I just dropped the other one. So I'll have to bend over and pick that up. Okay, got the one on there, and then I slip this rubber up over there. It looks all factory-like. Dropped, and we're going to put the gold one on the trigger. Okay, there we go. I'm trying to get to a good angle and see what I'm doing. Alright, we'll try that. Alright, so here's my trigger and my AC. So the blue one's going to go into the blue and white. I hate when the factory uses electrical tape. Plug right in there, you'll feel it pop in, and that should be good. And then the other one going right into the AC. There we go. So we're all connected. And what I'll do is put a piece of loom over all of this. Running it back to the box. Hanging out. So then what I'll do is I'm going to take a little bit of electrical tape and just wrap them around the wires now. Actually, I'm going to hold off on that till I run my 2 wires to the coil. So we'll do that now. Alright, so I skipped a step. I didn't skip a step, but I got distracted and then realized I didn't have the camera on, and then had to leave and take care of a couple customers and whatnot. So I did get further along than I got on video here. So just going to backtrack and explain to you what's going on and what I did while I wasn't actually taping. So I ran the coil wire back here, and that's connected there. And I ran the ground for the coil. So what I did there was basically I just ran the wire, and it's basically tied in behind the coil. So the bolt is going through it. There's a loop on the end of that wire. You can see right there. And I put some shrink wrap around it and looped it and just kind of keep it out of the way. All right. And then this wire here, I just don't like the way that it is routed. So I'm going to tuck it under the starter wire and plug it back in. So the thing with coils is, now these 2 leads are going to get hooked up to this, well, this 1 lead I should say now, it's going to get hooked up to the CDI, okay? The coil can be grounded anywhere, all right? So one pin for the coil goes to ground, the other pin goes to the CDI. It does not matter which, you can't get it wrong, okay? So doesn't matter which wire goes where, as long as one leg is grounded, the other one goes to the CDI, it is good, okay? So there's no right or wrong way to hook up the coil. Now that lead is over here. I just picked the color. I picked the, looks like a brown wire with a white tracer that I just ran because it was a color that I'm only running once. I don't want it to interfere with the other colors that I have, and I'll show you why in a little bit. All right, so basically all of our wires now, and we'll review which wires we have. Hold on, I'm getting tangled up. Okay, so all of our wires that we need run to the box as far as I can tell, except for the starter wire, except for, that's basically it. Starter wire and the engine ground can get grounded anywhere. So just to review the wires that we've got going on, okay, and I've got them all kind of, I don't like to use tape, but I will use tape to just group the wires, and so when I put the loom on it, it's a little easier. So we have our group here, which is basically our trigger and our AC power. We have our coil wire, okay, and then we have our 3 stator wires, which is a ground, and the yellow and the white are the 2 charging wires. Okay, now where they ended up landing so far, we do have our rectifier hooked up, is they do go in the box and they come out here. So your stator wires end up coming right to the rectifier, okay? And like I had mentioned before, we have a ground lug in there, so the green wire coming from the rectifier is basically getting grounded inside the box on our ground lug, and the stator ground is going in the box and getting grounded on our ground lug, okay? Next, I guess the main thing that is left right now is we're gonna hook up our CDI. All right, so I'm gonna set the camera up for that, and we'll get to that. So we have this Universal Parts Performance CDI. Just going to use this now. We did some CDI testing with a test light, and there are, honestly, I know there's a lot of people who test it, you know, well, this CDI is no good, just stay with stock, this, that. And a lot of that is true. There is some junk out there. But we did some CDI testing with a timing light, excuse me, an adjustable timing light, and actually it was about 2 years ago, and it was when I was kind of starting to put products on the website, and basically graphed out timing curves. Took a reading every 1,000 RPMs, from 1 to like 6,000 or 7,000. I can't remember because it was so long ago. Just to see what the timing curves were doing. Do they change? Are they, you know, is there a difference between from one CDI to the other? And yes, there is. Now, out of the performance CDIs, and yes, this CDI is actually manufactured in China. Now, you may recognize the box that, you know, the CDI is in, the casing. And my understanding is, now this is a Universal Parts brand. My understanding is that, and I did ask them about this, and the answer that I got was yes, this is probably the most popular case for GY6 CDIs as far as performance CDIs. There is a difference in the electronics that go in from one to the other. So I mean, some say Casoli, you see them on Amazon. There's other, you know, there's a bunch of these that look alike, and we actually tested a blue one versus this one, and the timing curves were different. So there's one that says blue CDI Racing or something like that on the box here, and this one actually, out of all the AC CDIs that we tested, this actually performed the best. Now we have since then picked up the NCY AC CDI unit. There's an SSPG CDI unit. Both are made in Taiwan. There's also one we didn't get to test for. There's an SSPG stock replacement CDI that's made in Taiwan. Didn't get to do that. So one of these days we're gonna break out a timing gun again, and we'll play with this stuff again. The Banjing on the website is by far the most phenomenal CDI out of every one we tested. And the adjustable ones that we tested, we tried, I think there was an Araku, there might have been an SSPG, or it might have been a Universal Parts, but there were like 3 different adjustable ones, and they seem just to be compared to like any CDI, they just kind of are like, they go from mediocre to worse as you adjust them. So I'm really not a big fan of the adjustable units. So what we're going to do is now, in other videos we talked about the pinouts on the CDI. So upper, you see there's 4 pins here, there's 2 pins here. This upper left hand pin is basically the trigger coming in. Okay, so that's our blue wire is going to hit this. And then right next to it in the right upper corner of that 4 pin part of the plug is going to be the coil going out. And then the bottom 2 pins are actually ground. You can use one or the other. It doesn't matter which. And then on the 2 pin side, the bottom pin is the power. In this instance, it's going to be AC power. Okay, on a DC CDI it would be DC power, but that's the power source for the CDI to make it operate. And then this, if you look at what we consider the top pin here, that would be the kill switch. We're not using that, so we're just going to bypass that altogether. So let me see where I got some parts laid out here with some stuff. Give me a second.